Okay, sorry about that.
Okay.
Got a
So
lot of code going on over here.
you're multitasking?
Always, feels like always.
So how, did you
All
guys
right,
want me
what do we got?
do you want me to facilitate would you like me to facilitate the meeting, or either of you guys want to take it on?
That is not my job. Nope.
I
You can go.
assumed I would, but I thought.
I'll defer to you. I'll defer to you, Tony, unless you could somehow get Sharon to come back.
If I could do that, I would, believe me. Okay, for the record, this is the December 15th, 2020 Finance Committee meeting, and call the meeting to order at 8:34 and call the roll. And I'll just recognize John Cubitt, John Carmella in attendance, and that constitutes a quorum. And also recognizing Kate Hedgeman, Esquire, and myself, Tony Pazzi, as part of the meeting. So 4 participants, no others at this point. So we have a quorum. I circulated the meeting minutes of October 20th, which was our last meeting. I didn't even get a chance to take a look at them. I apologize. It's been pretty busy. So I'm not sure if anyone else had the chance, but they're there.
I scanned them. I mean, I didn't read them word for word, but I did scan them.
Do you feel comfortable making a motion?
I think looks like John's reading them now. I'm going to give him one or 2 minutes, and then I'm going to make a motion.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I'm down at the bottom of it, so. Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the financial statements. This is going to be fun because this is not my ballywick. I did talk to Sharon yesterday, and she walked me through it. And just before the meeting, I started to try to walk myself through it, and I doubt very much I can interpret it.
You on the balance sheet one, Tony?
Yeah. So, so at the beginning of the month, we had 92,104 in cash, and that's down from previous year, from 321 290. So obviously we've lost a lot of cash from November to November, but that's largely due to a lot of the expenses that we paid out, and the fact that we haven't had much of any disbursement coming from enterprise. And you see that more as you go down the pages. Also, a lot of that is due to the value that's been assigned to the various properties. So let's see. So if you go down to total assets, if I'm reading this right, right now we have 731,000 total assets in property and cash and everything else. That's down from 1.3 million, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that we sold a lot of property last year compared to this year. So let's see. I apologize. I'm not reading this as well as I did yesterday when Sharon walked me through it. Shoot, there was a part of this that really shows how the values of the property kind of skew the numbers by a lot. And the bottom line is it doesn't really matter. It's just how it affects the numbers, and I'm not saying it.
Well, that's been a fact since we started this thing, even back when Fama was here. So we understand that piece.
Yeah, no, I know, Joe had a bunch of other properties revalued just about when I came on. Well, okay, so I'm never going to be an accountant. All right, so I'm gonna stop faking and just admit that I'm not an accountant. Let's see, let's see if I can. Well, why don't we jump over to
Who's filling these things out?
our accountant, Bowers.
Who's giving you these numbers?
Bowers and Company are our accountants.
Yeah, right. Okay, so.
What's going on with this thing? Okay, let me X that out. So I guess probably more important than that is cash flow. And do you guys have that file open?
Yep.
That's towards the end, right?
Yeah. So,
Looks like it's 8 and 9, page 8 and 9, maybe.
oh no, I'm sorry, cash flow is a separate Excel file.
Oh. Oh, I see it. Okay, got it.
The the screen's not coming up. Okay, there it is. Okay. So we're getting squeaky on cash flow. This is the month that we knew that we were going to run into some cash flow problems. And indeed we have. I did this yesterday and I didn't have enough time to project into January and the next quarter, but things will look, well, they can't look any worse than this, but they'll look better than this. So as of yesterday, we have a bank balance of $62,768. We have a pile of bills to pay. That amount is $61,645. At the end of the month, that should leave us with $1,122 left. So it's gonna be tight. But things will change in January. In January, we will sell 899 River Street and 103 Ferry Street and 790 River Street, which is a vacant lot. So the proceeds from should be
Those
about
closings are already scheduled, or you're anticipating?
anticipating. If not January, that probably early February. Wouldn't that? How's that sound with you, Kate? Accurate or?
We could close 899 even before the end of the year, but we need that release from the city. So, you know, or at least the first week in January, and I'm really trying to push it with that. Both 103 and 899, we're just waiting on title. That's why.
Yeah,
And,
no,
you know, yeah.
Do that. Do you want me to reach out to the city or to get the?
I'm copying you as we speak on an email to Mary Hagee.
Okay, I shouldn't be surprised. Well, that'll help.
What are the amounts? What are the amounts, Tony, of those?
899 River is 10,000. 103 Ferry is 70,000, and 790 River is 1,000.
Okay.
So another factor on cash. I'm sorry. Go ahead, John.
No, I said thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Another factor on cash flow, which will make help us improve. We have not received a disbursement from Enterprise Community from our last quarterly report, and that was because Tanya didn't feel comfortable issuing one because we hadn't spent as much as we did not spend as much of the advance that we received previously as we had expected. So she wants to wait until this quarter's report is in and the subsequent disbursement submitted to Enterprise, which will bring cash in around February 1st. I think I'm going to give her a call and essentially say to her, hey, we need the disbursement sooner than that. Because between the time that the last quarterly report was submitted and today, we have incurred a lot of expenses for the projects we have going on now, namely 11 Winnie, 54 Fifth Avenue, and 3229 Sixth Avenue. Those are our projects that were kind of held up waiting for engineering work to be done. And of course, that was after the COVID pause. But now we're starting to get some pretty hefty bills in, and you can see them. I think that the four highest expenses we have this month are for those projects. So I'm going to knock on Tanya's door and ask her if she would consider giving us disbursement to help us with cash flow.
Yes. Sorry, what'd you say? What ballpark of that number?
Let's see. 32, 42. So it's about a little over $45,000. And that's just this month. We paid out more in, obviously in November and October. So I think we've eaten through the advance at this point, or come close enough that we should be able to ask for a disbursement. So I guess the overall picture here is that even though cash flow can't get any tighter than $1,122, we should start to see improvements pretty quickly. And then going beyond that, the positives are 11 Winnie Avenue should be completed within a relatively short period of time. And that can be marketed, and depending on what the turnaround time is, that'll give us a cash infusion. 54 Fifth Avenue is going to take more time. Youth Build's working on that, but so it'll go a little slower than it would under a general contractor, but it is moving forward. And 3229, which is just a stabilization project, that will also be completed fairly soon, and we'll be able to market it. We're not going to see much of a gain on that because it's simply a stabilization, but whatever gain we get will be, pretty much pure profit for us in terms of what we put into the checking account. So again, things are looking tight, but all signs show that they should improve, with one notable wild card being 791 River Street. So. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay.
No.
Let me pull the agenda back up, see where we're at. Yep, wrong agenda. We got the board agenda. There we are. Okay, discuss any final issues, any financial issues, delays related to projects in progress. Kate, should we talk about 791 now, or do you want to wait till tomorrow? We should talk about that. We should talk about that in executive session. Anyway, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know that it has its place in a finance committee meeting. Why was it on the agenda?
It's always on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
This 791 would happen to be the most relevant one for this agenda item.
Oh, because of we can't sell it yet. So, yeah, I mean, in general, there's several issues that need to be corrected at the property. It's nowhere near to be near being done. And the board, has to meet with me in an attorney-client privilege session to talk more about next steps. So from a finance perspective, I don't see where we could recognize revenue from a sale much earlier than June of next year. More to follow on that on our
Yeah.
meeting Wednesday.
Yep, lots of
Got it.
support. Thanks, Kate.
Yeah.
So discuss anticipated closings. I think we've done that.
The other thing I would just bring up, and I think, it needs to be a discussion too with A&D, but we discussed it briefly there, is taking back, was it 785? I always get the addresses mixed up.
Well, there's three actually, 785 River Street, 836 River Street, which is owned by the same gentleman. SHLT is his company.
Yep. But 785 is the problem, right, Tony?
Could be the problem, yeah.
So we're currently investigating 785 and its condition before we take it back. The board, as you know, voted to take it back. And A&D approved that. And the reason for that is there might be emergency, work that needs to be done for stabilization or worse yet, demo. So before we take that back with cash flow problems, we want to know what we're looking at. So, I would just put that out there from the finance perspective that, before we do anything, it'll go back to A&D and then probably you'll hear about it again in finance so that you can all make a decision what the best thing to do here would be.
Yeah.
So that's really it on the properties.
Yeah. And that and just to mention that we're moving forward to foreclose on 3209, 3211 7th Avenue. Because they haven't
Yes.
done anything in about 2 years.
Yes.
So. All right, discuss status of potential grants and alternative funding sources, unless you guys had more to say on the other item.
Nope.
Okay.
No, I'm good.
So I had been talking to SEAT for a little bit of time, asking who they had, within their resources to help us find grants and sources of funding. And I received an email from their executive director over the weekend, and she suggested, this is Jennifer Lawrence. Jennifer suggested that she and I speak with someone that they've used in the past. I believe her name is Lindsay. I'm sorry, it's Lori. So we're trying to schedule a meeting so the three of us can have a conversation. And my thinking is if we can use Lori to do some research for what grants are available, potentially available for us. And I'm not sure if her role is both grant research and grant writing. That I'll find that out once we have a conversation. But right now, that's really what we need, is someone to be able to do the research to just to find out what's out there. Sometimes I see things hit and miss, but it's not like it's a dedicated thing that I have time to do. And that's really important, obviously. So I would anticipate we'll have that conversation sometime next week, and I'll know more after that. But I was happy to see the email because we need to get something moving forward.
Tony, if you want, once you do that, let me know, because I can go back to having her look at, the first thing would be that Neighbors for Neighbors and NCST potential properties, because those properties are really, that come from that program, the NCST,
Mhm.
some of them are ready to flip immediately, but some of them might need some rehab, but there's a value to it. Like, you know, we could sell it for not $1,000, right? We could sell it for much more than
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So I think, you know, if she wants some direction, I can provide her with some, you know, links and some information to look at those two programs first, because they've been successful, you know, with other land banks. And the Neighbors for Neighbors, you know, we'll want to know there what we're looking at because, you know, if you could get a grant, some rehab money for particular properties, and even if SEAT was also part of that, you know, in a co-development or something, you know, I think that would be a huge help to you. So I think those would be the first two things that she should look at. And right now, they're the only two things I know that would be fairly easy, not easy to get, but fairly, you know, they've given them to land banks before locally, right? So,
Yeah, we've talked about having this kind of a strategic planning meeting. Because we're entering brand new territory where all land banks have no AG funding coming forward. So I think we have to have a conversation about what we're going to be, and that conversation needs to be had sooner than later. I mean, I've got some thoughts in my head. Things like continue talking to the city about getting some properties of value, and maybe having that work out a little bit better this year than it did. It worked out, but you know, this past cycle could have worked out a little bit better.
yeah, I mean, for you, the Troy Land Bank, your overhead isn't high, but you really need operating funds. You know what I mean? And the enterprise grant has been a big help with that from the beginning. Because, you know, in my mind, you need the funding and income. So from the sale of properties, if you could support your overhead, then, you know, I don't know that you necessarily, if you acquire the right properties, that you necessarily need to have a budget to do work on the properties. But you're right, like you couldn't take a demo, or you couldn't take a stabilization with a high ticket price if you didn't have the money to do it. That's where the state funding cut is going to be an issue, right? So we'd have to kind of pivot and look at more projects like Beacon, or, you know, properties that, you know, somebody could buy for 20, 30,000 and put another 50 to 60 in it themselves, and it will be, you know, a good project. We wouldn't be able to take some of the dogs that we have because we wouldn't have, and none of the land banks will, it won't just be you. We wouldn't have funding for that. So another thing that crossed my mind too, and I'm not saying, you know, they even have any money or would even be remotely interested in doing it, but you could look to the Troy IDA. If they're, you know, doing pilots and things, they're earning income. And maybe there's a discussion with the county for a small budget line. A lot of people would probably laugh at me for saying that right now, but I think it's all holds, you know, all holds barred. You know, you gotta try to see what you can get. And if not, you know, that's fine too. But like where,
I know
you know,
Heather had that thought about going to county IDA for a long time. Personally, I don't see it happening, but you don't know unless you ask the question, right? So,
right, or maybe the economic development offices of the city have some thoughts on where they could find some money to help as well. You know what I mean? I don't know, with a partnership or something, but it's going to be rough on land banks, all
yeah,
land
I know,
banks,
I
not just
know.
you.
Oh, no, I know.
If we went to the county, would they require us, I guess it doesn't, we won't know the answer to this until we ask, but do we have to expand our scope then to include other places besides the city of Troy?
Well, if that's what the county wants, then that would get a lot more complicated, because then you'd have to get the county and the city talking together to basically really revise what we are as a land bank and make it really more like other land banks, which are county-based or multi-county based rather than just city-based. I mean, it's
That's
possible.
why I asked.
It's possible to do. I don't know if Rensselaer County would be interested. But it's another one of those questions where you don't know the answer unless you ask.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it would take a lot of approvals. And I'd have to look into it, but you might be able to do something, with an interim partnership agreement where, the council and the county ledge agrees that we would assist with projects outside of the city of Troy and have something particular in mind. Because basically the way it's set up is you can't go outside your jurisdiction.
Yeah.
It's part of the Land Bank Act. So we could probably make it happen. It would just need a lot of approvals and perhaps some amendments. But I think it's tough too, because a lot of the high ticket properties I can think of for the Albany Land Bank, it was outside the city of Albany, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it was Loudonville, it was, Colony, Cohoes, so, I think it's tough because municipalities are strapped now, so it's a bad time to ask, but, it's just some thoughts I had, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I personally, I feel there's a need in the county because there are a lot of abandoned buildings in some of the rural areas. And even the more affluent suburban areas, sometimes you get a property that just has been abandoned for years. I ran into that a lot in Malta. So, I guess it'll depend. If we have the conversation, it'll depend on how Rensselaer County sees their needs and what their budget is to be able to expand the land bank. So it's one thing for us to have a conversation like we're having now to talk about it, but there's another thing to get the wheels in motion to have conversations with the county, and we want to let the city know what we're having conversations about as well. So maybe that's part of the strategic meeting we can have. Wondering if I should add that to tomorrow's agenda. Think about that.
You could, but tomorrow's going to be
I know.
a longer meeting anyway, so
I know.
we'll see if we get to it.
That was that hesitation in my voice that you heard. It's going to be a meeting for a bigger purpose.
Yeah,
Okay.
it doesn't hurt to give people a heads up though, even if it's just the first time they hear it, so that the next time they hear it, it's not, not the first time.
Yeah, that's true. To get people's minds working on it. Okay. Just to mention other alternative funding sources, and I don't think these are going anywhere, but the New York Land Bank Association is constantly trying to hit the legislature up for permanent land bank funding. I don't see that going anywhere this year, personally. There's also a push to have a federal land bank grant program. The Albany Land Bank, the Schenectady or the Capital Region Land Bank, and our land bank, we're trying to have a meeting with Conco to talk to him about that type of a grant. So I'm waiting for that meeting to be scheduled. It was supposed to happen this week, but I haven't heard why it wasn't scheduled, but it hasn't been. So, but again, that's just in the financial times we have nationally and statewide and locally, it's going to be tough to come up with new grant programs. It's the way I personally feel about it, but as my wife will say, I'm mostly wrong. So or any wife would say. So, but those are potential opportunities out there on, you know, on a larger scale. So. I can't think of any other funding sources. So. That's what I've got for you. You guys have any non-agenda questions or issues you want to talk about?
I do not. Well done,
Mm,
Tony. You grinded through it.
Me neither.
Okay. Well, thanks for making the meeting on short notice. And I just kind of threw all this information out at you guys. So,
And I think we should make the new guy treasurer.
oh, that's a good point. I'm glad you said that.
I don't know him as well as you do, so maybe
What-
that's
what's
off
his
base,
background?
but
What's his background?
He worked for Pioneer for decades in the mortgage, I think commercial mortgages. I could be wrong, might have been residential. I think he's been retired there for like 3 or 4 years. He's on the Troy IDA. So I think he can bring to the table financial expertise that's a little different than Sharon's. So could be potentially pretty valuable to us. But Kate, the question I had, for some reason, I thought I read in the bylaws that board officers couldn't be elected until the annual meeting or committee seats. Vacancies.
there's a vacancy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So,
we can.
you know, technically, let's say he gets appointed, he would have to, we'd redo it, you know, when we approve everybody in March, January at the annual, whatever that is. But you could do it beforehand, provided he consents. And maybe it's you know, a discussion, you know, with his connection to the IDA. I don't know, you know, it's a discussion there, but I think he would be, no matter what, a good addition to this committee. But, you know, maybe we can kind of convince him that he'd be so good at it.
Well, you know what? Let me have a little chat with Steve Streichman so that, because he knows Elbert better than I do.
Okay,
But we need a treasurer, obviously. You
Yeah.
don't want me to be that. I can't be. I also have to find out, the resolution was passed by city, I'm sorry, the mayor made the appointment for Albert to be seated. I haven't seen that he signed the oath book, so I've got to reach out to him and the city just to verify that for tomorrow's meeting, if he's a voting member or not.
okay.
So can't think of anything else, guys.
All right,
Okay.
motion to adjourn.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you both.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.